While I was in the hospital with my dying grandfather, my father mortgaged my house for my sister. When I came back, he said, "She needed it more than you." I grabbed my jacket and said, "Then don't complain about what happens now." My name is Daniel. I'm 33, the oldest, the spreadsheet kid who grew into the spreadsheet adult. In our family, I'm the calm one, the person with jumper cables, the person who knows which cabinet has the light bulbs. My sister, Lila, is the bright one. She's the main act. I'm the sound check. That was fine for a long time. I don't need spotlights. I like things working. I own a small two-bedroom on the edge of town. I fix my own leaky faucets, label my breaker box, and put extra batteries in a clear bin because chaos starts with dead remotes. I work IT at a community college. Not glamorous. I like it. Students call me sir, and I pretend I'm not startled. On the Tuesday this started, I was in a hospital room with my grandfather. Machines breathed for him in slow, steady whooshes. The clock on the wall ticked like it had somewhere else to be. I'd slept on the vinyl chair for 2 nights, arms crossed over a jean jacket that still smelled like laundry soap from a rushed wash. I held his hand and told him about the Cardinals game from the night before because routine sounded merciful. My phone sat face down on the rolling tray with the warm ginger ale and plastic cups. It kept buzzing with unknown numbers. I silenced it. I poured water for my grandmother. I walked her to the window and back. We talked about nothing on purpose. When she fell asleep, I checked my phone and saw 3 voicemails from a number labeled County Title Services. No one ever calls you from a title office with good news. I put the phone back down without listening. My brain had room for one crisis. At noon, my father walked in with 2 coffees and a tall energy I recognized from Little League games he forced himself to enjoy. He kissed Grandma's forehead, squeezed my shoulder, and pulled me into the hallway with the vending machines. "You look tired," he said. "I am." He glanced at my phone. "Put that away. Today's not a day for paperwork." I didn't say anything about paperwork, I said. "Good. Because your sister has a lot on her plate," and he stopped, corrected. "We all have a lot on our plates." A nurse walked by pushing a cart that rattled. Dad lowered his voice. "After this," he said, meaning the hospital, meaning my grandfather dying in a room full of plastic plants, "let's talk. Nothing dramatic. Just some family logistics." "Now?" I asked, because he had that look like when he'd drop a topic in your lap and then call you defensive when you try to hand it back. "Not now," he said. "Later. Don't start. Be generous." He said be generous the way some people say be quiet. Back in the room, my aunt leaned over the bed and whispered a prayer. Dad handed me one of the coffees. It was sweet the way Mom drinks it, not how I take mine. He looked at the machines, the whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. "We're lucky to have each other," he said, eyes on the monitor, not me. "Your sister needs us. Don't make everything a debate." I didn't answer. The first trigger wasn't a fight. It was that sentence landing like a folded note slid across a desk. Be generous. Don't make it a debate. I put the coffee on the tray, took my grandfather's hand again, and watched the clock keep telling on us. I didn't wake up one day and find a mess. It was a slow drip. Lila was golden from birth. Yearbooks, pep rallies, people who remembered her birthday, without Facebook. My job at home was to carry the cooler and somehow also be invisible while I carried it. At 19, Lila blew a tire leaving a party because there were nails in the road. I Venmo'd the tow guy because he only takes one card. At 21, she lost her wallet at a music festival and called in the rain, crying. I drove an hour and paid the motel because she had no ID and they were being mean. At 25, she tried to start a candle shop on Etsy. I made her a simple budget and a silly logo in an afternoon. She sent me a scented sample and left the spreadsheet unopened. When I asked how she planned to cover inventory, she said, "You always figure it out." Our parents helped in their way. Dad runs a small contracting crew. He knows every tool brand by sound. Mom gardens like she's auditioning for a magazine that will never call. They love us. They love Lila out loud. They love me quietly and asked me to be understanding whenever quiet felt like a bruise. When I was 25, I bought the house with Dad's help. He insisted on being on the title to lock a better rate, and because one day we'll do a family trust and it'll be easier. I trusted him. We never got around to the trust. Work, holidays, Lila's emergencies. It stayed a line on a deed we both had. There were little humiliations that piled up into tall things. Mom would hand me a bill just this once. Dad would ask me to float payroll for his crew, 2 days, max. Lila used my Amazon account and sent me a picture of a ring light with the caption, "For the brand." If I hesitated, someone would call me rigid. If I asked to follow up, someone would say, We're family, not a bank. 3 months ago, Lila decided to open a wellness studio. Not a gym, not a spa, something in between with plants and neon. She had a Pinterest board and a lease she loved, and a landlord who needs a confident yes. She needed deposit, build out, equipment. Numbers that were big shoes. I can't, I said, because sometimes you can't. My mortgage, my roof, a water heater that wheezed sometimes. I offered knowledge. I offered to look at cash flow, at equipment lease options, at used machines that were still good. She rolled her eyes. God, you're so administrative. Dad said, we'll figure it out. In the weeks that followed, figure it out turned into me getting little pings. A bank email. Your mailing address has been updated. A text from Dad. Need your insurance binder for the house, just to double check. A group chat where Mom wrote, proud of us for coming together. When I asked, Dad said it was just housekeeping, nothing heavy. And also, don't be dramatic. So when those voicemails from County Title Services came through at the hospital, I didn't listen. My grandfather mattered more than my inbox. But the sentences Dad dropped in my ear, be generous, looped while the machine breathed in the corner like a tired animal. Grandpa died Wednesday morning. He went quietly, the way he wanted. We did the paperwork, hugged without any of it landing right, and then drove home in that stunned, floaty silence where every traffic light feels too bright. I walked into my house after 3 days of hospital smell and found 2 envelopes on the mat. One from a bank I already used. One from a bank I didn't. I put my jacket on a hook, fed the cat, took a shower that ran too hot, then sat at the table with a towel on my head like I was younger than I am, and opened the envelopes like they were going to be birthday cards. Welcome to your new home equity line of credit. The first one said, cheerful. It listed a credit limit, a variable APR, and an initial advance for $68,000 funded to third-party escrow. The second envelope was thinner. County recorder confirmation, a deed of trust recorded against my address. I stared at my name. I stared at the amount. My hands went cold in a way that felt like my bones remembered winter. I called Dad. He answered on the second ring like he'd been waiting with the line half-dialed. Breathe, he said first, like I'd started yelling. I hadn't spoken yet. We handled it. What is it? The house. The equity, he said, cheerful in a way that made my shoulders rise. We used a line. It's smart money. Interest is low. Lila needed it to close the lease. You mortgaged my house, I said. It sounded fake in my own mouth. While I was at the hospital. Come on. Our house, he corrected, quick. I'm on the title too. It was time that property did something for the family. Your sister needs a push. This is investment, Daniel. You didn't ask me. He sighed into the phone like I was late to something we'd agreed on. If I asked, you would have made a whole thing of it. This is why I didn't tell you until it was done. She needed it more than you. There it was. The sentence. It landed so flat I almost laughed. I looked around my kitchen at the cheap clock, the scuffed chair, the list of small things I've said yes to my whole life, and felt the word more slide like a drawer that's stuck until you pull harder. How much? I asked. 68 to start, he said. Then a draw schedule as she hits milestones. We'll cover the interest from the business until it stands up. It's a family project. No, I said, calm like when I tell students to push power and hold for 10 seconds. It's my house. Daniel, he said, gentle now, the voice that used to make me feel like a good son. Don't make me the bad guy for doing what's best for your sister. She's got timing. You've got stability. We're balancing. I looked at the cat. He blinked. My towel dripped water on my shoulder. My jacket hung, heavy. When did you sign? I asked. Yesterday. Don't spiral. Go get some sleep. We'll come by after dinner. Your mother already made a casserole. He hung up. He hung up on me like this was settled. I put my head down on the table for a second and listened to the house. The fridge hummed. The faucet dripped once, then remembered itself. The cat scratched the mat like he was practicing leaving. I checked the bank mailer again. There was a sentence on the second page about right to cancel within 3 business days. I read it twice. I could hear Dad's voice layered over the print. Be generous. Don't make it a debate. Lila texted a glittering photo of an empty storefront with a caption, key day, and a row of hearts. I put my phone face down. I went to the bedroom. I took down the shoebox with the deed copies inside, the ones the closing paralegal had handed me years ago with a smile that said, you did a grown-up thing today. I opened it, sat on the floor, and noticed the extra paper tucked behind the manila tabs where I hadn't left it. My father's handwriting is neat. He'd labeled it line info with a black pen and underlined twice. My grandfather had died 7 hours before. My father had freshly mortgaged my house for the family. He'd called it balancing. He'd called me generous preemptively. He'd assumed I would stay quiet. He was almost right. I called a meeting. That's how my brain works. Calendar first, chaos later. Group text, 5:02 p.m., my place. 7:30, non-negotiable. Mom sent a heart. Dad wrote, we're not fighting about this. Lila wrote, I have a walkthrough at 7. I replied, then come at 8. Before they arrived, I made a list. I do better with lists. I printed the welcome letter, the deed copy, my mortgage statement, the line in the brochure about the right to cancel before midnight on the third business day. I called the bank and asked practical questions in a voice I'd used to reset a router. The woman on the phone was kind in a way that felt like a step stool in a high cupboard. When my family came through my door, they brought two kinds of air, perfume and sawdust, and the sweet heaviness of what we were about to do to each other. Mom placed foil pans on the counter like a shield. We brought dinner, she said brightly. Sit, I said. My voice surprised me. It was steady enough to carry a box. Dad looked around my house like he was appraising, which he always does. Lila made a beeline for my mirror and adjusted her hair. I put the papers on the table and pointed to the sentence about rescission. I'm canceling the line, I said. Silence does a math of its own. You could feel everyone trying to calculate how much of that sentence was bluff. Dad broke first. Don't. You'll embarrass me. The broker is a friend. I'm not interested in your friend's feelings, I said. Or your timeline. Or being the quiet hero while you announce business plans on Facebook. Lila laughed like she couldn't help it. You're being so dramatic. It's leverage. We needed to move fast. You took my roof and called it leverage. It's our roof, Dad said again, stubborn. I'm on the paper. Don't act like you built this alone. I didn't, I said. I also didn't agree to pawn it for a neon sign. Mom put a hand on my arm. Honey, your sister is finally doing something. Don't kick her knees. I'm not. I'm taking my house back. Dad's jaw worked. You always were small about money. I'm precise, I said. There's a difference. Lila crossed her arms. You love rules. Here's a rule. Families help. You have stability. I have ambition. Dad made a call. Dad made a theft, I said. And now I'm making a boundary. I picked up my phone. I had already called. I had documented. I had the case number written on a sticky note like I write extension cords lengths on tape. The bank confirmed, I said. I have until midnight tomorrow to cancel. I'm doing it. The lien will be released. Any draws after that will be fraudulent. If you try them, we'll have a different conversation, and it won't be at this table. Dad stood. You would do that to your own sister? You already did something to your own son, I said. He pointed at me the way he did when I was 10 and left the rake outside. You think this is revenge. You want to hurt us because we didn't tell you. I shook my head. This isn't about revenge. This is about closure. They all blinked like the light changed. Closure, Mom repeated, confused like I'd used a word from a distant channel. Closing the hole where my life leaks out, I said. Closing the account where my house funds someone else's lease. Closing the storyline where I'm generous so I can be allowed to stay. I slid a second paper across the table. A simple agreement. I drafted it in plain language. No more shared cards. No more automatic assumptions. If Dad wanted to stay on the title, we'd draft a real trust with real rules. If not, he'd sign a quitclaim. I'd refinance in 6 months with a different lender. Lila would not use my address, my account, or my signature for anything. Ever. Pick, I said. Title with terms, or no title at all. Either way, the line is gone. Lila's mouth moved like she had a dozen words queued and none of them worked here. I'll miss the lease window. I believe you, I said. I'm not the window. Dad grabbed the papers and didn't really look. He looked at me, and in his face was that old thing, pride and irritation braided together like a rope we were both tired of holding. You'll regret this, he said, not a threat, a prophecy. Maybe, I said, but at least it'll be mine. I walked to the sink. I ran water. It hissed a little. I was still holding my phone. I didn't need to press anything. I'd already sent what needed to be sent. We stood there in the same room, related and suddenly very far apart. And for the first time in years, I felt taller in my own house. It was loud, then it was loud in silence. An hour after they left, the missed calls stacked. Dad, then Lila, then Mom, then private. Texts rolled in like weather. Don't do this. Too late to cancel? You owe us a conversation. You owe your sister a chance. You owe. I made rice. I ate on the counter with a spoon out of the pot like a teenager. I didn't answer anything for 2 hours. At 10:31 p.m., I called the bank again, repeated the case number, confirmed the rescission letter had uploaded. The rep said, "You're within your rights," in a tone that wasn't triumphant, just grounded. I said thank you too many times. By morning, there were 29 missed calls. By lunch, 57. By dinner, 83. Lila sent a long text broken into lines for drama. You don't understand timing. The build-out crew is lined up. I told everyone we're funded. You're humiliating me. Do you want me to fail? I stared at the phone until the text bubble faded. I typed, I want you to separate me from your plans. Then I put the phone face down like a lid. Dad left a voicemail with that scolding sadness he wears like a sweater. You went nuclear. This could have been quiet. That line was a bridge. You burned it. You think houses and papers are more important than your sister's life. I played it twice. He made it sound like I was the one who had changed something fundamental. Maybe I had. Mom called and left a different message. Honey, your father is beside himself. Lila hasn't stopped crying. You did this wrong. You're so good with systems. Why didn't you find a way to make the bank thing work and make everyone happy? I thought about the sentence structure. Make the bank thing work and make everyone happy. I put the phone by the sink and scrubbed a pan like it had insulted me. Around 5, Lila showed up. She has a way of knocking like the building owes her a favor. I opened the door enough to be polite. Let me in, she said. We can talk here, I said. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged into a smoky glare. You're cruel. I'm consistent, I said. You don't get it, she said. This was my shot. Dad finally believed in me. He always believed in you, I said. Just not with his own collateral. She flinched, then straightened. Fine. You win. We'll get the money somewhere else. You don't need to tell me how, I said, and I meant it like a favor, not a dig. She took 2 steps back and did the thing she did when we were kids, made a wide circle with her hands like she was drawing a line around herself, and I wasn't allowed to step inside. You will regret this, she said, trying on Dad's prophecy like a coat that didn't fit yet. Maybe, I said, but I'll regret it in my house. She left. My hands were shaking, and I was still sure. Both at once. That night, I pulled out my file box. I made copies. Title, mortgage, insurance, HOA. I put originals in a fireproof envelope, then the envelope in a backpack, then the backpack in my car. I changed my online banking password and turned off paperless statements. I made a folder called Legal and added what I had. I Googled a real estate attorney, read reviews like I was picking a toaster, and sent an email with calm bullet points. I wrote one line at the bottom. I want to set a boundary without burning the house down. It made me smile even though none of this was funny. Grandpa's funeral was Saturday. Black suits. Tissue boxes. Lila avoided me like I was a camera, and she was having a bad day. Dad's eulogy had the line I knew he'd use. Family is everything. People nodded. He looked at me when he said it. I looked at the flowers and thought about how much of my life had been paid in that currency. After the service, he cornered me near the coat rack. You canceled, he said, not a question. I did. They'll release the lien this week. That's what they said. He breathed through his nose, then said quietly, You made it hard. You made it illegal, I said. Let's not get stuck on the adjectives. He stared at his shoes. I shouldn't have done it like that. It wasn't quite an apology. It was a creak in the right direction. I let it stand on its shaky legs. At home that night, I slept. Not well, but better. I dreamed about a door I could lock without someone else's key in the outside of it. On Monday, the attorney called back. We talked for 20 minutes in simple sentences. He didn't do the thing where he performed vocabulary. He said, You're okay. And, yes, he had standing to open it, but not to draw without your consent. And, you did the right thing quickly. He told me how to document, how to send a letter that sounded like me but counted in a file. He told me how to remove Dad from the title without starting a war in public. He said the word boundaries like he meant it for a deed, not a relationship. It felt correct. I wrote Dad an email, not a text. Emails were ties. I wrote what happened, what I did, what I needed. I gave 2 options, trust with rules or quit claim and refinance. I gave soft timelines. I gave him my attorney's name and said, You're welcome to have counsel. I wrote one simple line in the middle in bold. You will not use my home as collateral again. He didn't answer for 2 days. The silence grew edges, then softened. On the 3rd day, he sent, We'll do it right. I'll sign off the title. I shouldn't be in charge of your roof. It was the nicest sentence he's ever sent me. It still stung. Both can be true. Lila sent a different kind of message. A photo of a smaller storefront in a strip mall with a vacancy sign. Plan B, she wrote. Then, after a minute, This one is ugly. Then, But I can afford the deposit. Then, Can you help me read the lease? Not money. Just eyes. I sat with it. I said yes. A boundary is an exile. We spent an hour on FaceTime going clause by clause. When she said, "I'll just skim the middle," I said, "That's where the traps are," and made her read anyway. She sent a thumbs up. She didn't ask for my card. Mom took longer. She texted pictures of casseroles she didn't bring over. A week later, she called and spoke like a woman down a long hallway. "I don't know how to do this with you." "Do what?" "Not ask you," she said. "You can ask me," I said. "You just can't assume." She exhaled, and the sound was older than both of us. "You sound like a man I didn't raise." "I sound like a man who finally heard what you meant," I said, and she didn't hang up. The lien release came in the mail, crisp and boring in a way I wanted to frame. I put it in the box. I replaced the batteries in my smoke detectors because rituals matter. I made spaghetti and ate it on the couch with a towel tucked in my collar like a child. It was quiet in my house. Not empty. Quiet. The calls slowed. The texts stopped sounding like sirens. I kept waking up early, like my life was a room with a window I'd finally opened, and the air was new enough to keep me from sleeping too late. On Friday, I stood in my tiny backyard and watered the one tomato plant I keep alive every year out of stubbornness. I wanted it to fruit just once. The cat sat in the window, judging. Dad called. I let it ring 3 times, then picked up. "We signed the paperwork," he said. "Your lawyer will get a copy." "Thank you," I said. He cleared his throat. "I hate that we did this to you." "I didn't say you did this to me," I said. "I'm glad we're not doing it anymore." He made a noise that could have been a laugh if it had more vitamins. "Your sister says you helped with the lease." I read words. She read them too. He paused. "You always were good at reading small print." "I'm learning to write it," I said. We hung up. I watered the plant again, even though the soil didn't need it. Sometimes you keep doing the motion until your body believes you. I'm not telling this like a court case because I don't need a verdict. I needed a door that locks from the inside. I have one now. I changed small things. I labeled 2 calendar blocks a week no and kept them sacred. I moved my emergency fund to a bank my family doesn't know exists. I took Dad off the spare key ring and gave it to my neighbor who feeds my cat when I travel. I told Lila I'll read contracts, but not sign them. I told Mom I'll eat her lasagna, but not her guilt. Lila found a cheaper space. It has fluorescent lights and ugly tile. She posted a photo with a caption that said we start small, and I tapped the heart and didn't add a dollar. Dad stopped calling me from rooms where decisions were already made. He started calling earlier, when things were still drafts. Sometimes I say yes. Sometimes I say no. Both answers get to be love. Grandpa's hat hangs by my door. I put it there because it reminds me that men in my family carry things with their hands and also with their mouths, and I can put some of it down. He worked until he couldn't. He also told me once when I was 8, handing me a wrench, "If you break something fixing it, you were the only one trying." I think about that when I'm tempted to make my boundaries perfect before I make them real. Here's the moral, simple enough to write on a sticky note and stick above the sink. I won't let anyone mortgage my house, my time, or my attention without asking, ever again. If I'm not in the room when the pen hits the paper, my name won't be on the page. If I'm not invited to decide, I'm not responsible to pay. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. This isn't revenge, it's closure. I'm building a life where the lights come on because I flipped the switch, not because I said yes until the wire burned. My name is Daniel. I still label the bins. I still fix what I can reach. The difference is that I no longer pretend I'm a utility the family can tap like a wall outlet. I'm a person. I own 4 walls and a roof and a door that closes. And when someone I love stands outside asking for all of it, I can open the door a little, talk through the crack, and say, in a voice that doesn't shake, "No."